They believed they had complete control over the globe and could buy anyone. But they now repent it so deeply that they are experiencing God's vengeance in ways you cannot understand. And God is accomplishing this through you. When demons see you, they identify you and hunt for a location to hide your scent, and your voice has changed. If what I'm saying resonates with you, rewind a little while the video is playing. Comment. I awoke in the comments. God has been quietly observing every struggle you face, every word uttered to you, and every action performed against you. Now, an unanticipated transition is taking place. Those who seek to destroy you discover that their previous actions and decisions are returning to them like a boomerang. Not a single moment has passed without God's gaze on you. Every action, intervention, and attack on your mission was in front of His eyes. Those who oppose you made the mistake of believing they could change the path God had planned out for you, while in reality, the foundation of their plans is buried in their own flaws. They failed to recognize that you are chosen and protected by an unseen heavenly power with a holy mission and purpose. Your adversaries marched forward arrogantly, confident that they could defeat you with their own might. The traps they set for you backfired, dragging them into the same ditches they created. This hubris gave them a false sense of security, leading them to assume they could alter your target, obstruct your path, and render you helpless. But God expected each of their moves to result in profound justice. And when the time came, justice silently took root and acted. Even while their inner torment remains hidden, they can feel the chilly breath of destruction on their necks. The foundations they believed in are falling like a pillar against a powerful current. Every move, every intervention returns to them like a storm. They are vulnerable in the face of God's justice, with no shelter or shadow to hide behind. If you trust in God. Now rewind this video a little while it is playing. Comment. I put my trust in God in the comments. Your foes, who once thought they were powerful, are now being lured further into an impassable maze with each move they make. Each move they take is no longer a free choice, but rather an unavoidable link in fate that leads back to them. Their own voices are lost in the echoing abyss, leaving them unable to communicate their own ideas or plans. Every step they made against you now spirals them with unseen links, drawing them right into the core of the terrible destiny. They prepared the shadow. They wanted to create. Originally designed primarily to weaken you, they have now collapsed on themselves, drawing each one into a dark vortex. This darkness hangs over their necks like an unavoidable fact. Everything they turned away from with closed eyes is now clearer and heavier in front of them. Time is ticking away for them. Like sand between their fingers, leaving them with no place to hide or escape. The power they believed they held is sliding through their hands like grains of sand, and the elaborate plans they made are unraveling and destined to fail. With each knot they tied, every move they make returns to them as a fresh, rather than a new pivot point. No matter how hard they try to restore balance, each step pushes them deeper into their own traps. In the midst of all this mayhem, they become increasingly desperate as they look for ways to flee. They drag themselves farther into the mire. God's intervention is becoming increasingly clear. Like an oncoming storm, this tremendous wave not only exposes them, but also drags all of their prior intentions and secrets to the surface, one by one. God's justice lurks around every corner, leaving no place to hide. Your foes can now sense the impending retribution. With each new action they take, the terror within them develops, gradually eating their inner serenity and hope. The actions your enemies use to attack you have lit sparks that draw them into their own doom, surrounded by God's grace and undying protection. You should never fall. Everything is under divine justice's supervision, and nothing escapes his gaze. What you perceive isn't only their failure. It is indisputable proof of your steadfast and unwavering calling. You've been through the most intense pain. Your adversaries believed they were driving you to disaster by seizing your nests, resources, and loved ones. They celebrated their victories, believing they had defeated you, confident in their triumph and talking about it. However, their arrogance set the stage for their own demise. They had no right to what they took from you, and now the remnants of their authority are being crushed in the hands of divine justice. Those who once declared victory with confidence are now seeing their dreams fade. You are not ordinary. Your presence shattered their tranquility, and your will destroyed their hubris. Your light shocks their insides every time you refuse, undermining their intentions. But what they don't realize is that as they attempted to take everything that belonged to you, including your peace and honor, they were planning for their own demise. Every adversity you face has not escaped God's attention. The agony you're experiencing was not overlooked. They believed they were destroying you. But each stride they made was a step toward their own demise. The anguish you're feeling is more than just a result of the past few years. Some severe wounds date back to your youth. Wounds caused by people who withheld their love or violated your trust. The seeds of hatred they had cruelly sown were silently waiting. After a long wait, the consequences of their deeds have now become apparent. The ground they thought was safe is gradually slipping away from beneath their feet. They undressed and estimated your struggles. But what about their fortunes? The joys they extracted from your suffering and the power they talked about have become a trap. They're unable to escape. Every action they have taken over the years is falling around them like an irreparable maelstrom. Everything that made them feel safe is now the chain that connects them. While you climb, secure in God's guiding hand, your foes writhe in the consequences of their acts. Everything they took from you will be repaid. More than enough at the hands of God's justice. Those who thought they were invincible suffer the fury of an unexpected strength. Desperation and problems weigh heavily on them, and bewilderment and internal imprisonment reign in their minds. Your adversaries' interior worlds and minds are silently withering beneath the shadow of their acts. Their days are filled with echoes of the plots they covertly devised, shattered beliefs, and a frightening sense of unease. They quiver as they tumble into the web of their own traps, the fate they once sought to control. Now they face a new severe and shocking struggle deep beneath their physical infirmities. Their spirits are also diminishing. Every breath they take indicates an unhappiness within them. They perceive fissures in their life. However, they can no longer prevent these fractures. Regardless of the road they pursue, they will eventually lose their power. They cannot avoid the harsh hand of justice. Those who formerly trusted, planned, and were possibly regarded as pals are now accidentally trapped in the divine change's web. Those who thought they could remain hidden in the shadows, feeling they had formed a secret alliance with even a tiny donation, are now caught up in this collapse. They may have thought they could stay behind the scenes, but every step they take and every time they remain silent adds to this maelstrom. Not only your adversaries, but also those who silently supported them. Familiar people who once trusted you, possibly acquaintances, classmates, or even family members who abandoned you, are being washed away in this storm. Even those who decided to remain in the darkness must now confront the harsh realities of the light. Hidden alliances, covert relationships, and silent statements are all being revealed. One by one, the safe ground they had relied on slipped beneath them. In this dark game, the secrets they've maintained for years, the peace they thought would keep them safe, are being increasingly shattered by the day. Those who have supported them begin to experience a concealed restlessness within themselves. That modest doubt develops into profound sorrow and fear. Silent contributors who thought they were outside the chain of events have now found themselves at the center of the action. Their lives are being carried away by the tremendous winds of the catastrophe they helped create. Everything happens not the way they planned, but according to fate's cruel designs. At this point, each of them must turn inward and confront their regrets. Friendships, affiliations, and transient gains that they once trusted and surrounded themselves with are fading away. The cold face of collapse pushes them, one by one, to confront the terrible secrets of their inner lives, causing every brick they created to shatter and move the concealed darkness within. Everyone is exposed in the light of divine justice, and they have no place to hide. This heavenly intervention, which spreads to every corner, shatters their life, bringing to light every action they had never considered or questioned. Even those who sheltered behind shadows can't keep themselves from being swept away by this massive tsunami. The wind of divine justice makes it impossible to hide. Every corner, every concealed spot exposes them to the truth. When they look back beyond the shattered trust, allegiance, and alliances, they only see regret and a black hole, while God brings the unchanging truth together. Everyone has their own role. There is no longer anywhere to flee. There is no peace in hiding in the darkness. Enemies may have behaved without thinking about the consequences, and they refuse to pay the price. However, the causes of their misery are now staring them in the face, and the shadow of the past is resurfacing in their lives. Along with their physical collapse, their mental balance is shattered, and they can no longer deny the link between their demise and the pain they formerly caused others. An incomprehensible shield surrounds you. They are writhing in their own imperfections, too feeble to approach you, as their own traps engulf them. Your existence is under divine protection. Your opponents may believe they flawlessly executed their plans to bring you down, but God has transported you to the farthest point, sparing you from any harm. While they believe they are seeing a reduction in your power as their attacks approach, no victory door has opened for them. You were never destined to fall into their traps. God has elevated you to a safe position, putting your foes out of reach as they approach with warlike intent. All of their nefarious instruments have been neutralized. Every stride they take with their weapons reduces their power to dust, dissipating before your eyes. What your adversaries don't comprehend is that every strike they endure just strengthens you. Every deception, every trap just adds to your inner strength. Those who are meant to fall see you rise again with strange vigor. They continue to plummet wildly as you approach an unreachable level. Your adversaries watch as power and will escape from their grasp, drifting in confusion, lost in their own conflict. They resemble shadows that have lost their bearings. They are unable to recognize that what they are after has long been lost. They are now searching for any surviving signs of you, hoping to find you again someday. But God has kept you completely away from them. To them, there is yet hope for victory. However, their efforts are infutile. Every action they take has a direct impact on you. Failures. You have been transferred to an inaccessible location. They only have anger from not being able to find you, as they flail in search of the unachievable. They fail to recognize that authority was slipping from them. You, as a selected person, have been both safeguarded and glorified. They felt they had influence over you, but it is now ineffective. As their systems fail, they face the burden of their own demise. Defeat silently approaches your foes, leading them unwittingly into an abyss. Their attempts to oppose you simply hasten their own demise on this path, surrounded by divine light. You walk with protection. Your foes' ways are as twisted as a maze. Every step they take leads to them becoming lost in their own traps. Even if they keep on battling with all their hearts, the outcome is unavoidable. Every attempt will fail because you have meaning in God's eyes. They were only promised failure. The conflict has already ended. Under this sacred protection, God's might gradually eats and exhausts your enemy's attempts. They crumble into fury and mayhem as you move forward. Your foes are being drawn into a growing agony vortex as they chase a sinister goal. They look for you in areas they once lived, attempting to track your footsteps. But your efforts are worthless because God has granted you secrecy. Their eyes are blindfolded. Their plans have resulted in internal damage, entirely shutting their mental channels. Their thoughts are frozen due to the weight of judgment. These minds, which used to move with purpose, are now stuck in a never-ending cycle within their own turmoil. Rather than standing out, they become lost in their own shadows. You are the most formidable impediment they confront. The chosen one. Rewind the video a little. And as the video starts playing, comment. I'll stop them in the comments. In a blind desolation. They are dragged aimlessly and helplessly, as if everything is obscured by a hazy mist. With each stride they take, they lose a bit more, sinking deeper into a dark sea that becomes deeper with each passing moment. They don't understand why they're moving forward or where they're going in the turmoil they created. They sink deeper with each passing instant. Those who formerly conspired against you with elaborate strategies are now chained by the same chains of those plans which they forged themselves. They no longer have any effect on you. While God pulls you to freedom. In a chaotic and unstoppable battlefield, He utterly destroys the fabricated order that they have imposed on you in these terrible regions. They wander alone. Every corner and shadow contains traps. The ditches they constructed with their own hands have now become cages that confine them. Every move they make adds to the weight of their previous mistakes, dragging them deeper into the field. They previously believed they dominated. They can now only hear echoes of what they've lost. With powerlessness and fear, God's decree weighs over them like a great and unavoidable load. They are being crushed by this decree, unable to comprehend, recognize, or confront the repercussions of their own wrongdoings. Once they were consumed by the intoxicating excitement of success, the power they believed they possessed slipped through their fingers, unaware that they had become nothing more than chasing an empty desire. Even after they understood they had lost their power, they chose to embrace the darkness with blind determination. Instead, they opened their eyes. Now the darkness has become their closest buddy. At the same moment they faced their most formidable foe. They thought they could see everything and keep everyone under control, but now they're alone and defenseless in the darkness. With each stride, you take every wrong decision they've ever made. Every mistake they made slams them like a bitter wind in their faces. There is no way out of this endless circle. God's ultimate justice surrounds them. All of their arrogance and artificial assurance are melting away in the light of this weighty punishment, leaving only an empty shell. Mental shackles are being dissolved one at a time. Everything they thought would set them free was actually simply a thread leading them to this terrible end. The escape routes are closed. Every corner, every hiding place contains echoes of their previous decisions. Even the masses who had once believed in them and crowded around them are now quietly receding. As a result of the heavy collapse, they were left utterly alone. God's rule not only limits people, but also protects them from the repercussions of their conduct. They are unaware, but are impacted by everything like a shadow. They are being hauled away without leaving any trace. They traveled away helplessly. You are in an inaccessible and unaffected position. Their search for you is motivated solely by pride and anger. However, they are not making any progress. They are battling with the consequences of their own mistakes. As they attempt to run, their own traps tighten around them. You have moved on, and they have become the lost ones. God's protection has put you beyond their comprehension, while they remain trapped in a never-ending cycle of failure, driven by their insatiable greed. Sometimes you may see them caught in this terrible loop, lost when following the trail you left behind. They are bound to old recollections and faded remnants that now roam behind the pathways you have long surpassed. Where they once stood boldly, believing they dominated, they are now entirely alone, whereas you have advanced to a level that they will never achieve. They're mistaken, falling and marching forward on a path of anguish with no escape. God has placed you in a safe, high place, while the false order they constructed above you has been utterly erased. They roam alone in these dark lands, in a chaotic and inescapable battlefield. Every corner and shadow contains traps. The ditches they constructed with their own hands have now become cages that confine them. Every move they make makes them feel the weight of their previous mistakes a little more, dragging them deeper into the field they previously thought they controlled. They can now only hear echoes of what they've lost. With powerlessness and fear, God's decree weighs over them like a great and unavoidable load. They are being crushed by this decree, unable to comprehend, recognize, or confront the repercussions of their own wrongdoings. Once they were intoxicated by success, the power they thought they possessed slipped through their fingers, unaware that they had become nothing more than chasers of an empty desire. Even after they understood they had lost their power, they opted to embrace the darkness with blind tenacity rather than open their eyes. Now, the darkness has become their closest buddy. At the same moment, they face their most formidable foe. They thought they could see everything and keep everyone under control, but now they're alone and defenseless in the darkness. Every bad decision they've made in the past, every mistake they've made, hits them like a cold wind in the face with each step. There is no way out of this endless circle. God's ultimate justice firmly surrounds them, and all of their arrogance and false assurance melts away in the light of this weighty punishment, leaving just an empty shell. Mental shackles are being dissolved one at a time. Everything they thought would set them free was only a thread leading them to this terrible end. Escape routes are now closed. Every corner, every hiding place contains echoes of their previous decisions. Even the masses who had once believed in them and crowded around them are now quietly receding. As a result of the heavy collapse, they were left utterly alone. God's rule not only limits people, but also protects them from the repercussions of their conduct. They are unaware, but are impacted by everything like a shadow. They are being carried away, leaving no trace as they helplessly follow the trail. You are in an inaccessible and unaffected position. Their search for you is motivated solely by pride and anger. However, they are not making any progress. They are laboring under the weight of their own faults as they try to escape, but their own traps tighten around them. You have moved on, and they have become the lost ones. God's protection has placed you above their comprehension, while they stay trapped in a never-ending cycle of failure fueled by their insatiable greed. Sometimes you may watch them caught up in this vicious loop, lost while seeking the traces you left behind. They are bound to old recollections and faint traces that now travel behind paths you have long forgotten. They once thought they dominated the place, but now they are utterly alone. You are now at a level that they will never achieve. They're mistaken, falling and marching forward on a path of anguish with no escape. God has placed you in a safe, high position. These opponents are more than simply foreign faces. Some of them are old pals, people from your class, as well as family members, have previously turned against you. The spot where they once derided you is now collapsing beneath the weight of their own actions. The burdens of reckoning cloud their brains. They suffer not only as a result of what they did, but also because they are trapped in the impasse of being unable to find a solution to their problems. They thought they were untouchable, but God's will has humbled them. Every step they take is transformed according to God's righteous decree. Their difficulties, emotional instability, and entrapment are not only mental, but also unavoidable consequences. They've fallen into their own traps. They believed they could escape by power and arrogance. Power and hubris have devolved into something destructive. Every day, a judgment weighs heavier on them. They're sinking deeper into their own psychological insanity. You have been elevated to a position your adversaries cannot reach because of God's protection while they writhe in misery. God has brought you serenity. Their own choices are no longer relevant to you. What they're looking for is not you. Their lives are buried beneath the wreckage they created with their own hands. God has guided you to a higher path, whereas they are forced to bear the unpleasant consequences of their own deeds. Even if they attempt to injure you, you do not reply in kind as a divided soul. You have chosen not to retaliate, but to pray. God's will is that you approach those who wish you harm with forgiveness. This is not because they deserve it, but because the divine will want to use you. Your adversaries are on the verge of annihilation, battling with scattered minds, battling sicknesses, and fighting spirits approaching extinction. Some are nearly exhausted. They are losing control of their life. However, God is showing mercy via your prayers for them. Your prayers may present them with a glimmer of hope in the darkness, leading them to repentance. As a final chance, God provides their pain not just as punishment, but also as a path to healing. Despite their rejection of the profound significance of this painful process, they find themselves perched on the precipice of disaster. Your prayers are not intended to reinforce their faults, but rather to encourage them to open their eyes and see the truth. Many may be dragged into irreversible consequences. However, the special responsibility assigned to you allows them to effect change in their hearts. God chose you for this duty not because they owe you anything, but because your prayers have the potential to raise their awareness as judgment approaches. Your prayers may soften some hearts, opening the door to final salvation for some. God sees every step they take. Every scheme, betrayal, and wicked phrase is concealed inside the depths of divine knowledge. God's attentiveness does not miss any detail. They may have felt that what was left in the past had been obliterated and forgotten with time. But God's memory is eternal, and His justice is severe. The inevitable reckoning now crushes them with its full weight. Everything they cast into darkness returns as a wave of rage surrounds them. God's timing is perfect. His judgment manifests as a forceful justice that prevents escape even after their hearts have hardened. God's judgment finds them and overpowers all human will. The years they had thought secure were only a postponement of their inevitable demise. They refuse to learn from their mistakes, and their burdens become heavier with each passing day. Their defenses for keeping their illusions are now failing. There is nowhere left to flee. No escape from the consequences of their deeds. Their discomfort worsens. Refusing God's kindness seals their doom. Their hearts are hardened and resistant. They are imprisoned and forced to endure a long period of pain. Now, with every step they take, they are surrounded by a whirlwind of challenges that will meet with opposition. The sturdy foundations they once believed in are being eroded, resulting in a constant collapse while they attempt to resist. They descend further into the depths of God's judgment. As you watch this unfold, you are raised to a height that your foes cannot reach, thanks to God's protection as you grow in power. You can watch them being carried down to the finish. They prepared with their own hands. Their staunch, unchanging hearts have become chains encircled by pain. If they do not turn, the judgment will be harsh and cruel. God's justice is unavoidable. And your opponents are discovering this fact in ways they never could have predicted. God's protective hand is upon you as you stand victorious. You have considerably more power than any resistance. The conflict is over. God's strength has dispersed your enemies' plans and reduced their efforts to ashes. None of their attempts will succeed against the mission that God has given you. While they rise in their own chaos, you are under God's constant protection. Targeting you does not change their powerlessness. God has already guaranteed your triumph, so continue on your journey with confidence. God guides every step you take. Every barrier serves as a reminder of His might. Your adversary's defeat is unavoidable. It is expected of you to rise above their words and pursue the purpose God has set for you, especially because you have been selected by God. This path cannot be changed by anyone. Now is the moment to tell your stories and the wins you've achieved via God's intervention. Your testimony will serve as a symbol of God's justice and the protection provided by being selected, giving people hope as they bravely share your tale, which is confirmation of God's victory. Don't remain mute. And to boost your vitality, add another message to the screen and listen.